What if I told you that Lewis Hamilton found in SF-25 a technical key that not even Ferrari had noticed? A detail that could turn a limited car into a real threat by the championship? Stay, because what he discovered in Silverstone could redefine his season, and something else. During the first free training session, Hamilton achieved a surprising first place with a time of 1:26,892, surpassing the MCL 39 of Lando Norris for a very small difference of 23 thousandths. This result, although an anecdotal appearance because it was a practice, was enough to light alarms in all paddock garages. According to the analysis collected by Ferrari's technical team, Hamilton was the first to exploit a characteristic of the car that had gone unnoticed even in the preseason tests and the first races. In particular, it detected a unique interaction between the front suspension system, a redesigned architecture with traction rods, and the gear height management system, which in theory should stabilize the car on braking and accelerations. What Hamilton achieved was to find an equilibrium point between these systems that maximized the aerodynamic efficiency of the car, especially in fast curves such as Maggots and Beckett's, where he recorded passing speeds that exceeded 6 km/h to any previous Ferrari in that same circuit. This performance was not a product of improvised adjustments. Hamilton worked intensely with Maranello's engineers on Friday night to analyze in-depth data. What they discovered together was that the SF-25 had a very specific operation window where its behavior was optimal, but that this window was so narrow that most pilots failed to exploit it. Only a pilot with the level of technical sensitivity and Hamilton experience could detect it intuitively in full action. This suggests that the potential of the car had been latent since the beginning of the championship, but without the proper interpretation, it was like having a key without knowing the lock. The Silverstone session, therefore, was not just a blow of effect in the timetable. It was a signal. Hamilton was not just beginning to feel comfortable with the Ferrari, he was beginning to understand it in a way that not even Charles Leclerc, who has piloted for the team for several seasons, had achieved. The performance of the SF-25 ceased to be a static unknown and began to reveal itself as a tanky technical instrument, capable of responding accurately if it was executed correctly. This was the first time someone touched the perfect note. And in the middle of a paddock full of rumors, technical changes, and media pressure, the simple fact that Hamilton could extract this level of performance in a seemingly irrelevant session marked a before and after in Ferrari's narrative for this season. They were no longer a team that expected the miracle of a miraculous update. They now had a pilot capable of converting existing tools into a real competitive advantage. The discovery of Silverstone, more than an anecdote of practice, was the first indication that Ferrari could finally be awakening. Ferrari arrived at the Silverstone circuit with a clear ambition, validating the technical direction taken from Austria and demonstrating that the improvements implemented could be sustained in high-speed conditions and lateral load. What had been introduced into the Red Bull ring was not simply an aesthetic adjustment or a temporary solution. It was a deep review of the soil of the SF-25, a critical area in the generation of aerodynamic load and, therefore, the global car of the car. This new package included precise changes in the 4 key areas of the flat background: the front fences, the edges of the ground, the central body, and the diffuser. Each of these modifications was designed with a fundamental objective: stabilize the airflow under the car in situations of high dynamic demand, something that the previous Ferrari could not guarantee consistency. The central problem that Ferrari had been dragging since the beginning of the season was its extreme sensitivity to the variation of march height. The car lost aerodynamic efficiency when it was loaded with fuel or by going through high-speed slopes, forcing its pilots to lift their foot earlier than desired to prevent the car from hitting the asphalt. This technique, known as lift and coast, brutally penalized the race rhythm, especially in high-speed circuits such as Silverstone. This is where Hamilton's finding becomes even more significant. Not only did he adapt to that critical behavior, but he understood how to mitigate its effects within the current range of adjustments. He did it taking advantage of the new front suspension, a configuration of traction rods that improves the accuracy of the axis, and adapting the pilot style to keep the car inside its ideal operating window. That is, where the car can generate the greatest amount of aerodynamic load without losing stability. This type of adaptation is not common or simple. It requires not only talent, but experience, instant reading capacity, and total trust in the mechanical response of the car. The front suspension, due to traction rods, allows a more precise management of the vertical movements of the car. But its true power is revealed when it works in combination with a march height control system calibrated to the millimeter. Hamilton discovered that, under certain speed conditions, tire temperature, and fuel load, this configuration could neutralize the aerodynamic rebound of the car, which in previous seasons was known as porpoising without compromising the stiffness of the chassis or sacrificing rear traction. In parallel, Ferrari does not stop. It is about to implement an even more radical update at the rear of the SF-25. It is a new suspension architecture specifically designed to correct the high load variations. Unlike the front solution, this rear will focus on keeping the car pressure center constant even when the tank is full, an aspect that has historically penalized Ferrari in the first race stint. This new piece has already passed the dynamic laboratory tests and is in the aerodynamic validation phase in the wind tunnel. The technical team hopes that it could debut in Belgium, but if the results are favorable, Silverstone could be advanced. This synergy between pilot and technical team, between track sensations and scientific data, is what begins to change the narrative for Ferrari. It is no longer about whether the car is competitive in absolute terms, but how well its potential can be exploited through a fine, almost surgical interpretation of its key components. The modern Formula One rewards those who dominate the technical detail, and what Hamilton has achieved is precisely that: reduce the distance between practical theory and implementation. While other pilots still struggle to find confidence, he has established a new standard of how SF-25 must be piloted to obtain results. At this point of the 2025 season, what is coming for Ferrari is both a promise and a warning. The promise is born from the technical and competitive finding that Lewis Hamilton has uncovered in Silverstone. The SF-25 has demonstrated, for the first time tangible, that it can operate in a high-performance window if it is understood and managed with surgical precision. But that promise also implies a warning. If Ferrari does not capitalize this moment, if this spark does not convert into a sustained flame, all the progress achieved could fade in the middle of the relentless calendar of the championship. From the technical perspective, Ferrari is facing a turning point. The team has confirmed that the radical update of the rear suspension that seeks to eliminate the variations of height under load and stabilize the dynamic behavior of the car in long races is almost ready to be introduced. It is a critical piece, since it would solve one of the most serious problems of the SF-25: its tendency to suffer loss of aerodynamic efficiency when the deposit is full or when it faces circuits with many weight transfers. This update, once validated in the wind tunnel and test bench, could allow both pilots to extract maximum performance without having to resort to defensive techniques such as the lift and coast. In other words, Ferrari could return the ability to run without restrictions, something indispensable to fight for podiums and victories. Ferrari must demonstrate operational maturity, something that has been absent in previous campaigns. The way they manage the following practices, classification and career strategy sessions will be vital. Decision-making should be based on the new understanding of the car, and not on data inherited from previous versions of the SF-25. This is where the importance of joint work between engineers, simulators, telemetry and pilots enters. Hamilton has taken the first step to reinterpreting the car from the track, but now the factory in Maranello has to respond in real time, adjusting parameters, developing specific motor maps and adapting the configuration to each calendar circuit. This finding comes right at a strategic point of the calendar. Silverstone marks the prelude to the summer break, but also precedes circuits where the SF-25 could benefit greatly if the average and high aerodynamic load conditions are successfully exploited. Ferrari will have the opportunity to demonstrate whether seen in Silverstone was an exception or the beginning of a consolidated trend. If they manage to maintain positive inertia, even without winning immediately, the message will be clear: Ferrari has ceased to be an unknown to become, again, a tangible threat. Ultimately, what follows for Ferrari is not a technical issue, not even tactic. It is a matter of identity. The team has the possibility of recovering its status as a large team, but must do so with a new mentality. They can no longer live from the past, or expect historical prestige to impulse them automatically towards success. They need to act, adapt and execute with millimeter precision. What Hamilton has opened is not just a door to a new level of competitiveness. It is a window of opportunity that could be closed if they do not take advantage of it with intelligence, discipline and renewed ambition. Because in modern Formula One, understanding your car before others not only makes you faster, it makes you a candidate for the title. This discovery in Silverstone represents a critical point for Ferrari and for the narrative of the 2025 season, but also for the conversation among all of us fans. Therefore, the question that we must ask ourselves is not only if Hamilton's technical finding will transform the course of his campaign, but if this is the time where Ferrari really begins to become a legitimate applicant to the championship. Are we witnessing the beginning of a new winning cycle? Or is it a momentary illusion that will fade as fast as it came? We want to know your opinion. Do you think Ferrari finally found the key I needed? Or is it too late against McLaren's solid impulse, the technical counterattack of Red Bull, or the constant growth of Mercedes?